list. I think that will matter when it comes to voting. So could you transfer them over, please?
Will do.
Thank you. We'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Judy. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the open session of council for July 19th. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Judy.
Great. For the land acknowledgement, we acknowledge that we are in the lands of Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional land of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we as beneficiaries of the treaty must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Mr. Mayor, there has been no supplementary agenda for tonight's meeting, and there are no disclosures of pecuniary interest. I'll pass it over to Ryan for Planning Services.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The process to be followed for each application will be as follows. 1. The clerk will announce each individual planning item. 2. The clerk will advise if any written submissions have been received regarding a planning item. If so, the clerk will read the written submissions that have been received. 3. For any items where a written submission is received, administration will proceed with the presentation. 4. Council will be asked if it has any questions of administration or the applicant if present. 5. Council will be asked what actions it wishes to take with regard to the item. Notice: if any person or public body that files an appeal of a decision of council in respect of the proposed applications does not make a submission to the municipal clerk of the corporation of the municipality before the proposal is approved, they are not entitled to appeal a decision to the local planning appeal tribunal if otherwise eligible, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as party to the appeal. Information on council's actions tonight will be posted on the municipal website. All persons who have made a request or who have made a submission regarding a particular planning item will receive a notice of council's decision, including appeal procedures. Any other person who wishes to receive a notice of decision must submit a written request to the municipal clerk. Thank you.
Item 10A.
Thank you. 10A, zoning bylaw amendment, Bloomfield Business Park, 7th Line West and Prosperity Way. Mr. Mayor, there are no deputations received on this matter, and there is no conflict of interest.
Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Thompson, you each move this, please.
I'll be happy to move it, Mayor Caniff.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Thompson, if that's who you asked for, is absent this evening.
Okay, Councillor Latimer, could I get you to second this, please?
Sure, no problem.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Sorry, all votes are in. Motion passes 16-0. Moving on to the next application, 9B, application for zoning bylaw amendment, Opportunity Villages Community Land Trust, 10 Taylor Ave, community of Chatham. Mr. Mayor, there are no conflicts and we have one deputation. It is received from Mr. Henry Savek, and I'll read that now. Keeping the poor poor. While it may seem like a great idea to convince taxpayers that this group of elected officials care about those who are disadvantaged, this recent proposal, if approved, will not solve the problem of access to housing and wealth creation for the disadvantaged. The idea that placing homes, living structures of from 500 to 900 square feet on community-owned land and calling it home ownership is misleading. The land in question should be divided into deeded, separate mini lots to purchase the home and the land beneath it. That is where the true wealth creation is possible and a path to moving forward sustainability for those home purchases. Part of the problem appears to be the advisor group that is recommending this. We are unable to verify that any micro investors are involved with advising on this project. Providing even tiny homes would reduce the purchase price significantly and make home ownership possible for all involved. Finally, any rezoning is premature until the full Phase 2 environmental assessment is complete, given the historical use of the proposed property. Rezoning it before that report being made public is seriously premature. Excellent idea, but very much lacking in the initiative to empower those less fortunate to enjoy the benefits of home ownership and real estate investment that we can enjoy. Henry Savek. And just to note that the agent is also on the line. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Jacques, you going to make a presentation then, please?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The subject property is approximately 2.6 acres in size and located on Taylor Ave, going through to Memory Lane in the community of Chatham. The property is currently zoned medium density residential, which allows for a number of housing types, such as townhomes, fourplexes, and apartment buildings. The applicant has put forward a conceptual development proposal that also includes 1 and 2 unit houses, such as single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, and or duplexes. That is the nature of this zoning bylaw amendment. The amendment before council tonight proposes to add the following dwelling types as additional permitted residential uses at the property: single detached dwelling, duplex, semi-detached, triplex. And the zoning bylaw amendment will also allow the construction of 1 ancillary building to support a future housing development with extra indoor amenity space. With regard to the written submissions, I'm not going to debate each point, but I do want to make a couple of clarifications and use this opportunity to provide some education around affordable housing and the need in Chatham-Kent. The letter indicated that this was community-owned land. I did want to point out that this land is privately owned by a not-for-profit, and it is not owned by the municipality. Secondly, the letter links affordable housing or home ownership and wealth creation. The fundamental planning issue here is the provision of affordable housing and the provision of housing in general. There are many other ways where people in our community could build wealth, and certainly it's not exclusive to home ownership and land development. That would discount the very important rental housing stock in our community, which is needed as a form of housing for many in our community. And to equate this one development down to needing to solve the affordability issues in our community, I think is also a little bit misleading. One housing development alone would not solve this need in our community. People's housing needs are supported by a culmination of many actions by many groups within a framework of maintaining and expanding housing supply, promoting housing stability, advocating needs, and strengthening partnerships within our community. It's my opinion that the applicant certainly is supporting bringing housing to our community, including the provision for affordable housing. I know my colleagues in community human services, specifically housing services and employment and social services, have been before council advocating for a specific community plan, being the 2020 to 2024 Housing and Homelessness Community Plan. This is really a document that outlines, what's the public interest with regard to housing and homelessness in Chatham-Kent. And I really implore any members of the public who are interested to really understand the need, what's been done, what can be done, and what's the way forward in Chatham-Kent with regard to housing, to go online and review this document. And I will say that the proposed housing development at the subject property, it does support Chatham-Kent's housing and homelessness vision, that every community member in Chatham-Kent has an affordable, suitable, and adequate home. This particular proposal specifically aligns with several strategies within our community plan, being that it's bringing planning policy in the form of this recommendation to encourage the creation of new affordable and accessible housing. It's leveraging municipal investment to develop this housing. It's supporting a nonprofit housing developer, and it's providing an alternative option for housing, including options appropriate for seniors. The letter also touched on the fact that there is an ongoing environmental site assessment at the property, and that this zoning amendment is premature before that assessment is completed. I can assure council that it's not premature to change the zoning to allow these different housing types at the property before this is completed. The property is currently zoned for a number of residential uses as it is. It would be premature, however, to give final site plan approval, or at least a building permit as well, before these studies are completed. And as this is, we use evidence-based planning here in Chatham-Kent. So when the environmental site assessment is completed by the developer's consultant, that will be reviewed by the municipality. And myself and other staff, along with the developer, will consider what those recommendations are from that environmental professional. And only at that time will we determine if a phase 2 environmental site assessment is necessary or if it is not. And council can look forward in the future to receiving a site plan for this development for consideration, should the zoning be approved tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kirkwood-White and Councillor Crew, can I get you put on the floor, please?
So moved, Your Worship.
Happy to second it.
Councillor Kirkwood-White, did you have some comments?
Yes, I did. I really wanted an opportunity to provide a bit of an update on the status of the Brickworks community for those who may be interested in learning a little more about what the Volunteer Board of Directors is hoping to achieve through the establishment of the Opportunity Villages Community Land Trust. OVCLT, as it is affectionately called, is a federally registered nonprofit organization, which was established in December of 2019 to address the shortage of affordable home ownership options in Chatham-Kent. The website, ovclt.ca, was launched in September of 2020, and within 72 hours had received over 300 expressions of interest. That number has now increased to almost 400. Needless to say, all preliminary negotiations with financial institutions, suppliers, and builders came to an abrupt halt with the pandemic, but the volunteers who came together in 2019 to create the vision are still very committed to seeing this project come to fruition. This particular zoning amendment is one of the first steps in the process. The group is currently finalizing designs for the units, as well as the common unit or assembly hall, undertaking environmental assessments, as Ryan has mentioned, in order to fulfill the municipality's requirements for a record of site, doing stormwater management work, securing support for both construction and mortgage financing, and finalizing other details regarding the life lease reservation and occupancy agreements. And the group has also hosted a neighborhood meeting to provide information about the Brickworks community and to secure input from those living adjacent to the development. Our major challenge at the moment is attempting to raise sufficient funds for the construction of the common unit, which will be used by the residents of the Brickworks community, as well as neighbors, for community meetings, family gatherings, and other opportunities that are designed to build a strong and cohesive neighborhood for the new homeowners as well as the current residents. The common unit needs to be built first because it will serve as the energy hub for the development. To that end, the group has created a GoFundMe page to generate revenue for its construction. All contributions, large and small, will be recognized on a donor wall, which will be constructed in the common unit. Fundraising, the costs associated with the common unit will help the OVCLT reduce the overall cost of construction so that we can sell the homes below current market to those individuals who are of low or modest income and desire to transition from rental accommodation to home ownership. And I'd like to take this time to acknowledge the support that the group has already received from the municipality, which approved a $200,000 grant and $180,000 in in-kind supports in December of 2019, which will be released as soon as the details in the legal agreement are finalized. The Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority, which has agreed to help with the grass cutting on the property. Huron Tractor, formerly McGrail Farm Equipment, which provided a tractor and a driver on 2 separate occasions to help remove fence posts and fencing. Waste Connections of Canada, which has provided 3 waste bins to date to collect refuge during volunteer cleanup days. Relief and Zero Waste Chatham-Kent volunteers who have assisted with property cleanup. The Chatham-Kent Nonprofit Center, which has provided free office space and access to Wi-Fi and photocopying equipment. The David Suzuki Foundation for choosing us as one of their top 10 finalists for the 2021 Future Ground Award. And just recently, Integris, which has provided funding to cover the costs associated with PV modeling for net zero or net zero ready status for the development. And I really would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the significant number of volunteer hours to the tune of about $43,000 for 2019 and 2020 alone that have been devoted to this unique and what we are being told is a one-of-a-kind project in Canada. I'll certainly be able to provide another update when the site plan comes forward to council for approval in the early fall of this year, we hope. I would encourage my fellow councillors, as well as those listening in, to review the information that has been posted to the OVCLT website, that's ovclt.ca, to view some of the photos that have been taken over the past 18 months, to see who is involved and what role they are playing, and to consider a donation to help construct the common unit. And Mr. Mayor, that's all I have for this time.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Still waiting for 2 more councillors, please. And 1 more. Okay, all votes are in and motion passes. Moving on to 10C, applications for consent and zoning bylaw amendment. Joseph Porter and Sonia Couto, 118 Cornhill Street, Community of Chatham City. There are no deputations and the applicant is not on the line.
Councillor B. McGregor and Councillor Finn, can I get you to move this, please?
Happy to move it.
So seconded.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in, motion passes. Moving on to 10D, applications for consent and zoning bylaw amendment. Estate of Erica, Arnold, Gary, and Robert Wensler, 209 First Concession Line, Community of Wheatley, West Kent. There are no deputations and the applicant is on the line.
Councillor Harrigan and Councillor Oche, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved, Mayor Canada.
Seconded.
Seeing no questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes. Moving on to 10E, application for consent 1815796 Ontario Inc. and Decor Aluminum Limited, 155 Irwin Street and Heritage Road, Community of Chatham City. There are no deputations, Mr. Mayor, and the agent is on the line.
Councillor Solomon and Councillor Bondi, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved.
And seconded.
Seeing no questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes.
With that, we'll go to notice of motion. Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I, Councillor Anthony Scacci, give notice I will be bringing the following motion forward for voting discussion on the August 9th meeting of council, where it's a 240 feet by 150 feet parcel of land located adjacent to the Blenheim Memorial Arena on the northeast side is underutilized, whereas the parcel is located within walking distance of 3 public schools, 1 high school, Memorial Park, Memorial Arena, and nearby neighborhoods. Whereas there's been community interest expressed to establish a community partnership and develop the land for future recreational use, including the potential donation of time and funds. Therefore, be it resolved that staff provide a report back to council regarding development options for this parcel of the municipal property for future recreational use, including partnerships for upfront capital investment, ongoing operational and life cycle funding for long-term benefit of the community. May this report include public consultation and feedback from potential user groups and organizations interested in pursuing any potential projects.
Closed session report. Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor, I would move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday. Oh wait, you said closed session report, right?
Yes.
Not
You just want to get this meeting over, don't you?
I don't think I got a report from Meredith, and I didn't.
It's okay, Mr.
sorry.
Mayor. We can update at the next meeting on the 9th.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't receive the report tonight. Sorry.
All right. We'll go to non-agenda business.
Okay. Sorry.
I know we're going to get an update. Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'm just wondering if Chief Case or other members of SLT are able to give us an update on the status report in Wheatley. I saw news this morning on the Facebook page that the fire crew was called back, as well as the hazmat team. So looking for a public update on that situation, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it was June the 2nd when we first had our first call to 15 Erie Street North, and the crew spent 17 days on scene dealing with the hydrogen sulfide that was coming from the ground in and around that building. To conclude that incident, the owner installed hydrogen sulfide detection within his premises, and at 11 minutes past 8 this morning, there was a 911 call to report that those detectors had actuated to indicate that hydrogen sulfide was actually in the building. So the crew from Station 20 Weekly attended with an assistant chief, and we immediately asked for the provincial hazmat team to go along, and they've been on scene all day. They have confirmed that hydrogen sulfide is in the building, and they've been able to take samples which have been sent away for laboratory analysis, which was something that we were unable to do previously. And that's hoping to try and give some indication about where the gas is coming from. Because of the nature of the gas, and it's explosive, it's corrosive, and it's extremely toxic, we have 23 residences evacuated, which has displaced more than 50 people, and 30 businesses are closed once again. The majority of these are the same as the ones who were closed back in June. We remain on scene. Firefighters have been there all day, and they'll be working through the night to maintain the safety of the evacuation. And it's worth saying that the hazardous materials technicians from Windsor were unable to enter the building formerly known as the Pogue, 15 Erie Street North, because as I went through the door, the alarms went off to show that the atmosphere was explosive and highly dangerous, hence why we've had to cut off the hydro. In addition to all of this, I've made requests through the Provincial Emergency Operations Centre, and I've asked for assistance from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, and I've also asked for assistance from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry Services to try and get to the bottom of this again. I cannot imagine how frustrating and upsetting this is for the people who are displaced once again. I cannot imagine how upsetting it is for the businesses who find themselves evacuated once again. But I can assure you that we're doing everything we can to keep the area safe and to keep the community safe. And once again, I give credit not only to the community of Wheatley for their cooperation, but to the firefighters who have been on scene all day and will be there throughout the night to keep their own community safe. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Caniff, may I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Case, for that update. During the last evacuation period, there was quite a concern from community members around the inability to find a source of truth for public updates. I think, CK Fire does an excellent job on their social media in terms of giving updates, but is there an opportunity for CK to commit at least, daily or once every 2 days in the, short period of time to providing those public access, even if the situation remains status quo? I think one of the lessons learned from our last state of emergency in Wheatley is that there were, quite a bit of questions people had in the community. And what that ultimately led to were individuals who were curious or had questions to go to speak to the volunteer firefighters or the people on site. We really don't want people in the four corners of Wheatley. So if we can provide that information to them, I think that will go very far in helping everybody to stay safe and let the volunteers and professionals do the work that they're doing. So is that something you think could be possible?
I can confirm we provided a press statement this morning. We've just done an update tonight, but that's from an emergency response point of view. I think it's fair to say that the EOC, the Emergency Operations Centre, met at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and I'll let the acting CAO or perhaps Mr. Kelly might want to jump in, because again, we're still trying to work out the frustration for me is that we're responding to an emergency situation, but we still do not know what the cause of this situation is. It's not like someone can turn the tap off and then we can get people safely back in their homes. So if Mr. Kelly wishes to comment about some of the work, the engineering teams have been working alongside us all day to try and bring this matter to a safe conclusion. So with your permission, Mr. Mayor, if Mr. Kelly wishes to give a bit of comment about some of the exceptional work that his team have done alongside ours today, that might be helpful for the community.
Mr. Kelly?
Mr. Mayor, I don't believe Mr. Kelly's on the line.
Okay. Bruce, do you provide an update then? Or comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, unfortunately, I can't speak to the technical aspects that Thomas Kelly's team has been providing. But what I can say is, as Chief mentioned, and to Councillor Harrigan's points, the intent here is to monitor the situation overnight, as Chief said, and we're reconvening first thing tomorrow morning with the Emergency Operations Center to review the situation then and determine next steps. So that's really where we're at this point. And yeah, unfortunately, I can't really add to the engineering piece. I wouldn't do that justice, nor should I speak to that. So.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's Thomas and he's on just by his phone. And so It's not identified. So he is here to speak to it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Your Worship. I'll turn it over to Thomas then.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. I've been logged in by phone. I've had some computer issues. So first of all, my team has been out there looking at it from an engineering perspective for the period of the day. And with this is an opportunity for us really to try to determine the source. So the evaluation from the first gas leak that we had was that it was a pressure relief situation. It happened very quickly. It only lasted about 48 hours. This time, when this occurred, we had, with the help of the hazmat team, we have captured essentially air samples on the main floor. And why that's very valuable to us, we've already taken those samples and we sent 2 of those samples to labs, one in Mississauga and one in Alberta. And it's our intention that we'll be able to determine, at least narrow the scope of the source of the leak. So there's 2 possibilities. One is a biogenic and the other is a thermogenic. And what that really means is that, is it coming from a water well or is it coming from deep beneath the earth in some type of natural gas well? So this will help narrow that scope. It's really important for us. We have 2 samples that we're looking at there that are going out to labs. We also have a lab in Windsor that's looking at it. And finally, we have provided samples to the MNRF so they can do their same evaluation. So once we get that data back, that will take about a week's time to get that data back. And we'll be able to report out exactly what we were able to find.
And Councillor Harrigan, I just want to add to your question was, will we provide regular updates? The EOC, we will work towards providing the public with regular updates on that. That's certainly, as you pointed out, that was one of the weaker points that was pointed out last time. We don't want to repeat that.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Caniff and team, for all the work and support. I'm really hopeful that the samples may give us a bit of a direction to work towards, and that the provincial ministry is also able to come to the table to help us find the source and the solution.
Councillor Oche, followed by Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to make sure I received a call later tonight on from a business, and I sent Mr. Kelly the number and contact. So I'm hoping someone will reach out to them tomorrow, if possible, to let them just to answer any of their questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Thomas Kelly from the Infrastructure and Engineering Services team. We will gladly do that first thing tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. My question is, this seems, a little kind of strange. It's happened twice in maybe the course of a couple of months, but and because of that, my question is, when the source is identified, presuming that it is identified, is the source containable? Because I don't understand almost anything that we're talking about as far as the source. I do get that there's a contamination problem in a commercial operation affecting many residences, but when the source is identified, how is it fixed? Or is it a natural occurrence that can't be contained? Or is there, like somebody had mentioned earlier, is there a tap that gets turned off? That's my question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Thomas Kelly, General Manager of IES. So when this happened last time, we engaged all the experts we could possibly find throughout Canada and the US to try to gain as much information as we could. And with this situation, the advice we got was that this is a pressure relief situation. And in fact, this situation may reoccur. The advice was within 2 weeks. It may occur within a month. It may occur within 10 years, even 20 years. So what has happened is that there's been a pressure buildup of gas underneath the earth, and it will always go to the path of least resistance. So it has found some level of path of least resistance, and right now it appears to be the drain in one of the properties along Erie Street. So once we narrow the scope, we will be able to determine if it's from water wells or if it's from natural gas wells. If it's a natural gas well, we'll work very closely with the Ministry of Natural Resources and start to look at what are the available leak paths that would be logical. You typically start with those that are closest to the source of a gas leak. However, it could be happening from many meters away, even up to 200 meters away. So, and if it turns out to be biogenic in scope, then it's potentially from a water well. So then we'll look at just the water wells that are in the area. So it is only going to help us narrow the scope. And I can't tell you, this is an extremely difficult and challenging engineering problem because it is underground, and it really will involve much more testing. And all of that testing comes at a risk, because anything you do to disturb the soil and any type of evasive work that you may do may open up another leak path for another well. So it is going to be a challenging problem for us. And it's the fact that it's on private property makes it even more challenging as well.
Thank you, Mary Kenneth. So, Mr. Kelly, if you do determine the source, there's not necessarily a remedy by determining in, like, if there's a natural gas leak, you find the leaky pipe, it's fixed, it's over. In this case, no, everything's underground. So, and I'm not trying to be like a bad news guy here. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it. But by determining the source doesn't necessarily make for remedy. Is that correct?
That's correct. You will start with a work plan, though, and step by step try to eliminate the variables. So one of the challenges we have had as well is that the actual location of all the wells, there are actually 27,000 of these wells in Ontario, and the actual location is not very accurate. Sometimes it can be within 20 meters, sometimes within 100 meters. So the records are very, very poor. The technology in this environment too does not exist where we can use technology to determine underground where those wells are. So that's what I say. We will work, if it is a natural gas well, it's essentially the responsibility of Ministry of Natural Resources. And if it's related to water, it's responsibility of MECP, which is the Environment and Parks Ministry. So it is something that we absolutely, as a municipality, need to get our, as Chief Case mentioned, need to get our upper levels of government moving forward. Chatham-Kent has taken really a significant lead by capturing the gas source so that we can at least start to narrow the scope. And we've handed those over to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and also sent our own samples out to the lab as well.
Thank you, Mary Kenneth. Thomas, again, this is a very juvenile question because I'm not an engineer, obviously. As the gas enters the drain into the commercial property, that's where the exposure is, I understand, into the POG, right? That's where it comes in through that drain. Would it be possible to just block that drain off and then have that gas find its next path of least resistance? And again, that's a very juvenile question, but I'm just asking, like, can you do, obviously you're just going to send the problem elsewhere, but there seems to be a large effect on a lot of people with the gas coming in commercial Wheatley. And maybe if that gas was released somewhere, in a cornfield somewhere, it wouldn't have almost any effect. So again, very juvenile question, but I just felt.
No, thank you, Councillor Bondi. These are all, I think, questions that the public will ask as well. So it's the ideal situation would be that we use that gas leak to find the source of the leak, right? And the source of the leak, again, could be over 100 meters away. So that would be the ideal scenario. So we actually cap and seal it at the source. However, what you just stated is an option, and you're absolutely 100% correct that you may seal it here only to have it appear at another property. And this is exactly the discussions we've had with the experts in the field. By the way, as we probably know, there's been other communities in Ontario who have suffered this, many communities in Alberta. This is a way of life for them, and also in Pennsylvania in the US as well. So we've talked to all of those, and you really go down a very dangerous path where when you start to seal it, for example, if you were to seal the actual drain, you effectively push it and you could push it to another private property as well. So you continually, you could be in a case where you're chasing the problem continually. And then responsibility of that is something that even becomes more challenging and difficult. And this is why we feel very strongly that both ministries need to get very actively engaged in the solution of this. And we need to push for their support.
And thank you, Mary Kenneth. Thomas, just one more thing, and I won't beat this up for too long. But if you do find the source and it's been described as a pressure leak, so pressure has to be relieved one way or the other. It's going to go somewhere, right? It's like steam. It's going to find somewhere to go. So I would understand, I think, that the source of the gas leak, if it is pressurized, it's got to go somewhere. So, and again, this may be out of even your senses, engineering experience, but what do you do with it? Because if it's a pressurized leak, it's got to go somewhere. So do you just vent it out into 100 feet into the air? Or if it's pressurized, it's got to be somewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, your assumptions are correct that you can seal it. There are many gases. The entire Don area is based on a philosophy of sealing gas under the ground. So it can be controlled with the right materials. So that is one solution, but the other solution is to properly vent it. So rather than, let's call it controlled venting, right? So right now, this venting is occurring at the basement of a private property. So if you could find the leak source, you could design a system and vent it in a much more safer environment would be the choice. We've also, I should mention, we've engaged Enbridge as well. We spoke to them several times, and even since the last leak, we have not stopped working on this and trying to gain even on our own expertise, but also trying to work with others in Chatham-Kent and abroad throughout Canada to try to determine what the best work plan is. So it will all depend on how long this lasts. So the last one lasted only 48 hours. It will really depend. We're not sure how long this one will last. It may be something similar. It may be longer. It is truly a very challenging problem for all engineers across Canada.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Thomas, thank you very much. Very informative answers. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Seeing no other hands, we'll go to reading of the bylaws, first and second. Councillor Solomon, Councillor Pinsino.
Moved. Seconded.
Seeing no one opposed, motion carries. Third and final reading, Councillor Foss and Councillor Hall.
Also move.
So seconded.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now, Councillor C. McGregor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Canna. I just realized that my husband has the TV up. Apparently there's a baseball game on. Okay, here we go. I move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, August 9th, 2021, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.
Councillor McGrail, can I get you to second that?
I sure will.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, we'll end the meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.